Hi everyone, and welcome to Unpacking the Book of Mormon my name is Caleb. Today we're on to this is episode 4. We're on to chapter 4 of the first book of Nephi in the Book of Mormon. Now, quick recap of what's happened so far in the general storyline. Lehi received visions from God and was commanded by God to take his family and flee Jerusalem. It's about 600 BC. King Zedekiah is reigning because it's going to be destroyed. We know 10 years later the Babylonians come in, wipe it out. So they flee for 3 days and 3 nights, and they travel like 150 plus miles or 250 plus kilometers down to the Red Sea, and then they pitch their tents there, and then Lehi receives another commandment of the Lord to send his 4 sons back to Jerusalem to grab the brass plates, the plates of brass, which were a record of the Mosaic law, the scriptures, and it had a genealogy of his family. So it was with his cousin or second cousin or someone named Laban. So we've seen the brothers go back to Jerusalem and try a couple different methods. They tried asking nicely. They tried giving him all the money that they left behind in their house and all the riches and gold and silver and precious things and stuff. Laban sends his servants afterwards to kill them and takes all their stuff. And they flee with their lives. And then Laman and Lemuel, the 2 older brothers, got super angry with Nephi for basically being behind this because they were scared. And they start beating with sticks, and an angel appears and tells them to stop. And they need to listen to their brother Nephi, basically. And that's kind of exactly where we left it off. Now we're going to go through chapter 4. So, and it came to pass that I spake unto my brethren, saying, Let us go again to Jerusalem. Let us be faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord. For behold, he is mightier than all the earth. Then why not mightier than Laban and his 50? Yea, or even his tens of thousands. Now, that is a really interesting verse right there, because we talked about how Laban was obviously a mighty military leader or something. Now, I said Laban and his 50. What if he had 50 personal servants because he was a captain of 10,000? That makes him like a general. He's a great mighty warlord general person. And so either that, or it's just because 10,000 is used as a large, phenomenally big number to imply like millions. So it's, you can take it one of 2 ways. Either he is just a sort of a captain over 50, or he is a general over 10,000 soldiers. And the 10,000, either he's captain of 50 and the 10,000 is sort of embellishment. Like, no matter how many people he sends, unless God's greater than that. Or he's saying that he has like sort of 50 personal guards and servants there, and he's a general over 10,000. Which, either of those things, it works. We don't know the exact details there, and so he's, therefore let us go up, let us be strong like unto Moses, for he truly spake unto the waters of the Red Sea, and they divided hither and thither, and our fathers came through out of captivity on dry ground, and the armies of Pharaoh did follow and were drowned in the waters of the Red Sea. So again, they were Jews. They knew the Jewish law and the stories from their scriptures and things. They knew who Moses was. He was a great figure, and they knew the Jewish freedom from Egypt. And again, Nephi and Lehi at least saw themselves very much in a similar thing, that God was helping them flee captivity because Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. And he said, the Lord is going to help us because we're basically the same here as Moses and the children of Israel fleeing Egypt. And God will make miracles happen for us too. Now, behold, you know this is true, and you also know that an angel has spoken unto you. Wherefore can you doubt? Let us go up. The Lord is able to deliver us, even as our fathers, and to destroy Laban, even as the Egyptians. Now when I had spoken these words, they were yet wroth, and did still continue to murmur. Nevertheless, they did follow me up until we came without the walls of Jerusalem. So they went back with him, but they were still angry and not, they were begrudging and not willing, but they were still shocked enough by their encounter that they were kind of willing to come, at least. And it was by night, and I caused them that they should hide themselves without the walls. So he's telling them to hide themselves. He told his 3 brothers, hide yourselves outside the walls. And after that hid themselves, I, Nephi, crept into the city and went forth towards the house of Laban. So Nephi, the youngest brother here, probably like 13 or 14 years old, like big, super big for his age and stuff, but like still a young kid, basically, having faith in God, and I was led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which I should do. It's a really crucial idea here, because again, you have biblically and historically, you have this whole letter of the law versus spirit of the law argument. We know from the Old and New Testament, like Jeremiah in the Old Testament, he talks about the new covenant that the Messiah will bring, that it will not be broken, that its law will be written upon the heart and not upon stone, and that the knowledge of God will deem it no longer necessary to put into written words of instruction. So it's not about having everything spelled out for you, it's about learning to follow the Spirit. The law is there as general guidelines. The 10 Commandments are all still very good in principle and things, but you shouldn't have to rely upon the exactness of the law the way the Jews were relying on it. That's why Jesus came and said, don't even be angry. Turn the other cheek. Give him your cloak also. Like, don't lust upon another man. Don't lust upon another woman. Otherwise, you basically already committed adultery with her. He set a higher bar, a higher standard. And you can see what's happening here. Nephi was just going forth, being led by the Spirit, following his gut, basically. It's more than his gut, because he was following the Spirit of the Lord, because he had faith that he had that manifestation. He trusted in God, that God would lead him to do the right thing. And so one of the great things we learn from this, it confirms what he said here, like in Paul to the Corinthians said, Christ who has made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit of the law. For the letter killeth and the Spirit giveth life. Again, so it's all very much in harmony with Christ's teachings and things. And this is where it gets much more interesting, morally and things. Now nevertheless, as I went forth, I came near unto the house of Laban, and I beheld a man who had fallen to the earth before me, and he was drunken with wine. And I came to him and found that it was Laban. So he's fallen the Spirit forward. He goes to Laban's house and finds Laban near his house, passed out, drunken with wine. And I beheld his sword, and I drew it forth from the sheath thereof, and the hilt thereof was of pure gold, and the workmanship thereof was exceedingly fine, and I saw the blade thereof was of the most precious steel. So he was obviously a great warrior, had a really fancy blade, and wealthy. And it came to pass that I was constrained by the Spirit that I should kill Laban. So here's the Spirit. So, like, again, this is one of the 10 Commandments, is thou shalt not kill, and here the Spirit of the Lord is telling him to kill. But I said in my heart, never at any time have I shed the blood of a man. And I shrunk, and would that I might not slay him. He didn't want to do it. And the Spirit said unto me again, behold, the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. Yea, and I also knew that he had sought to take away mine own life. Yea, and he would not hearken unto the commandments of the Lord. And he had also taken away our property. And it came to pass that the Spirit said unto me again, slay him, for the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. Behold, the Lord slayeth the wicked to bring forth his righteous purposes. It is better that one man should perish than that a nation should dwindle and perish in unbelief. And now, when I, Nephi, had heard these words, I remembered the words of the Lord which he spake unto me in the wilderness, saying, that inasmuch as thy seed shall keep my commandments, they shall prosper in the land of promise. Yea, and I also thought that they could not keep the commandments of the Lord according to the law of Moses, save they should have the law. And I knew that the law was engraven upon the plates of brass. And again, I knew that the Lord had delivered Laban into my hands for this cause, that I might obtain the records according to the commandments. So, this is all interesting here. You've got, like, about 9, 10 verses here. 8 verses in which there's this argument here happening a little bit, where the Spirit of the Lord has told him that it is God's will, like, God delivered Laban into your hands here because it's really important that you have these records as part of my plan for you and your people, and things. You need the scriptures, you need the word of God. And it's better that one man who would not hearken to the commandments of the Lord. So he wasn't a righteous man. It's better that, and again it says the Lord slayeth the wicked. So it gives us a picture of the quality of Laban in God's justice here. And it's better that one man should perish than a whole nation should dwindle and perish in unbelief. So, and it's a really interesting sort of moral conundrum that you get given right there towards the beginning of the Book of Mormon, that I know a number of people have sort of, I guess, questioned and worked over it a lot. And again, it comes down to this idea that, again, the Lord slayeth the wicked to bring forth his righteous purposes. And that we as men cannot know what is the absolute best thing because we don't see the biggest picture. At this time, Nephi, he's just like, there's what, like 6-8 people in their family or something, they're fleeing or something. They have this, the Lord's commanded him to do this, but the Lord also is showing him here the bigger picture, that his children, they're leaving Jerusalem altogether. They're starting their own people, their own nation on this promised land that the Lord promised them. And so, again, the needs of the many outweigh the few here. Therefore I did obey the voice of the Spirit, and took Laban by the head of the hair, and smote off his head with his own sword. And then after he smote off his head with his own sword, he took the garments of Laban, he took his clothes and put them on his own body, yea, even every whit, and I did gird his armor about my loins. So he dressed up in all Laban's armor. So Laban obviously was recognizable, had a recognizable uniform and armor that he would wear out drinking. And after I had done this, I went forth to the treasury of Laban. So he had a treasury. Again, as I went forth to the treasury of Laban, behold, I saw the servant of Laban who had the keys to the treasury. And I commanded him in the voice of Laban that he should go with me into the treasury. And he supposed me to be his master Laban, for he beheld the garments and also the sword girded about my loins. And he spake unto me concerning the elders of the Jews, he knowing that his master Laban had been out by night among them. And I spake unto him as if it had been Laban. And I also spake unto him that I should carry the engravings which were upon the plates of brass to my elder brethren who were without the walls. I also bade him that he should follow me. So, I'm assuming that, again, as he said, he was acting following the Spirit up here before. And I was led by the Spirit. So he must have felt prompted there that the servant should come with him and not stumble upon Laban before morning time or something like that. And he, supposing I spake of the brethren of the church, and that I was truly that Laban whom I had slain, therefore he did follow me. And he spake unto me many times concerning the elders of the Jews, as I went forth unto my brethren who were without the walls. And it came to pass that when Laman saw me, he was exceedingly frightened, and also Lemuel and Sam, and they fled from before my presence, for they supposed it was Laban, and that he had slain me, and sought to take away their lives also. And it came to pass that I called after them, and they did hear me, wherefore they did cease to flee from my presence. And it came to pass that when the servant of Laban beheld my brethren, he began to tremble, and he was about to flee from before me, and return to the city of Jerusalem. And now I, Nephi, being a man large in stature, but again, we know here he said he was a very young man, exceedingly young, and that his stature was in contradiction to his actual age, and that he was the youngest of 4 unmarried brothers. So I really don't think he could have been much older than like 14. And I've met like 13, 14-year-old boys who are quite big and quite substantial for the age, and if you dress them up in armor and stuff, you would think they were full-grown men, unless you looked really closely. Now, Nephi being a man large in stature, and also having received much strength from the Lord, therefore I did seize upon the servant of Laban, and held him that he should not flee. And it came to pass that I spake with him, that if he would hearken unto my words, as the Lord liveth, and as I live, even so that he would hearken unto our words, we would spare his life. Even so that if he would hearken unto our words, we would spare his life. And I spake unto him even with an oath, that he need not fear, that he should be a free man like unto us, if he would go down into the wilderness with us. And I also spake unto him, saying, Surely the Lord hath commanded us to do this thing, and shall we not be diligent in keeping the commandments of the Lord? Therefore, if thou wilt go down into the wilderness to my father, thou shalt have a place with us. And it came to pass that Zoram did take courage at the words which I spake. Now Zoram was the name of the servant, and he promised that he would go down into the wilderness unto our father. Yea, and he also made an oath unto us that he would tarry with us from that time forth. Now we were desirous that he should tarry with us for this cause, that the Jews might not know concerning our flight into the wilderness, lest they should pursue us and destroy us. And it came to pass when Zoram had made an oath unto us, our fears did cease concerning him. And it came to pass we took the plates of brass and the servant of Laban, and departed into the wilderness, and journeyed into the tent of our father. That's chapter 4. Now, I want to talk about a few other interesting things in here. So, he spake unto Zoram with an oath that he shouldn't fear. And again, we talked about an oath back a couple chapters earlier. Like, as I live and as the God live. It's basically saying, like, if I'm telling you a lie here, may God strike me down. And again, these are religious people. They're devout people who have, like, in the Old Testament, God was very much, because of the stubbornness of the Jews, a God of fear. It was often portrayed that way because they didn't get the idea unless it was, like, thumped into them, like, to fear God and fear his retribution, and because that's what you do with children. Like, that you learn by showing them consequences for their actions and sending them to time out or whatever you may have, but you give them consequences and show them when the consequences happen, and it acts preventatively until they can learn to just not do it and see their own actions and things. And that's in many ways what Christ came to do. He raised the law and said, you don't just need to obey this because you fear retribution. You want to do this because it's the right thing, it's the best thing. And so that oath, and then when Zoram spake an oath back to them, saying that he would go with them and stuff, when he swore it in an oath, their fears to cease. And again, it shows the power here of integrity and some of the moral fiber and things that we've lost in many ways nowadays in our society. So there's some really good, important things there. One thing that this is just an interesting tidbit here, but verse 9, and I beheld his sword, and I drew it forth from the sheath thereof, and the hilt thereof was of pure gold, and the workmanship thereof was exceedingly fine, and I saw that the blade thereof was of the most precious steel. Now, and Nephi here is just a kid. He's like somewhere between 12 and 14 years old. How would he know that it was pure gold and that the blade was of the most precious steel? Now, I've had friends who've sort of made, I guess, an assumption or guess or a theory that Nephi was an apprentice blacksmith. Like that, like, and again, if he was like quite big for his age and stuff, that like blacksmiths need to be pretty big and stuff, and so that would have, like, if he was big for his age, like that would have been a pretty good profession for him, and they would have. And again, we'll see as we go through more of the Book of Mormon, there's a few of these other signals that Nephi had an idea of the workings of, like, metal work and things like that. and you see more clues of this. So it's my personal. I've kind of taken that theory on board. I think it's a pretty good idea and explains a number of things there. So that's a good thing there. Now, I guess, okay, if you think I haven't answered that whole the morality of the killing argument there well enough, again, it's this is a far less harsh standard than the eye for an eye sort of canon that you see in a lot of traditional Judaism. There's very much a, if you murder, you shall be murdered idea to the mentality, and our modern day laws and principles aren't built that harshly, in large part because of the Christian influence of the Judeo-Christian value system, because Christ gave us a higher law to aspire to. We have the basic law, the Ten Commandments, that are kind of there and to serve as a general guidepost of this is bad behavior and stuff, and you shouldn't do this stuff, and it's not the best. And then you have Christ say, okay, spirit of the Lord, this is what you're really aiming for up here. You're aiming to be perfect. And so compared to the eye for an eye thing, and again, this is 600 years before Christ, compared to the eye for an eye thing, like killing one man, and again, if Laban was a general, he undoubtedly would have killed people. He most likely would have killed people. He had a really fancy sword. He had lots of servants and things. He was a commander in the armies. Like he's described here as being like among the wicked and not being willing to keep the commandments of God. So he was also apparently quite a rich man and thirsted after riches and the love of money, which as the scriptures say is the root of all evil, the love of money. And so there's like Laban here is not a very worthwhile person to save. So, and again, like I think I take more issue with the fact that he made like Nephi, who's potentially only like 12 years old, do the job. Like that's a hard thing. That's probably more questionable to me. Like the idea that God, who created all of us and created, like gave us the chance to come to earth at whatever time and can take us away whenever he wants, decided that this man is wicked and needs to die because I have a higher plan and a higher goal for you and your children in this promised land, and I want you to have the scriptures and the word of God. Something like it's it just doesn't make any sense that like it doesn't make any sense that letting Laban live to track him down later and hunt them down because he wants his stuff back and kill them all. That doesn't sound like it's at all in harmony with God's plan. And again, he referenced like right in the beginning of the verse, like just as Moses, they says the Lord parted the Red Sea and they escaped. And then like if you think about it, God didn't have to make the Red Sea come back and knock them all out. God didn't have to do that. He could have helped the Israelites get across and close up the waters of the Red Sea before the Egyptians got across. So why would he kill the Egyptians? Why did the Lord drown them all in the depths of the Red Sea? Again, I think it's because it's the justice of God. He had his chosen people here, people that he had made a covenant with through Abraham, that he would preserve their seed, and that they were like there's a lot of important things in the Abrahamic covenant in the relationship with the Jews, and we through Christ in baptism, we take upon ourselves that Abrahamic covenant. We take ourselves into Israel, like because we become the children of God and stuff when we make that baptismal covenant with God. And so there's an important thing here that God, in preserving the righteous, will sacrifice the wicked. And sometimes, yes, sometimes righteous people die for whatever reason. And again, this is not like, it would be a much more lengthy video if we got into all the ins and outs of that sort of discussion. And there's a lot of things you can talk about with that. But for but I guess my personal biggest takeaway from this is that whole spirit of the law versus letter of the law from this whole chapter, because Nephi is asked to bear false witness. He's pretending to be Laban. He's technically thieving, though you could argue technically that he's not, because they came and offered to pay for it and offered the riches, and Laban stole their riches from them. So technically they've kind of already paid for it. But he does kill and he does bear false witness. Arguably he's breaking 2 or 3 of the 10 commandments right here. It's a quarter of the 10 commandments right here in this chapter. But he's doing all things being led by the Spirit of the God, by the Spirit of the Lord. He reasons with the Lord. He's like, I haven't killed anyone. Like, you want me to kill someone? Like, he doesn't just, like... Again, he's not just... it's not like he just gets this feeling, oh, I should kill this person, and just does it. He battles with himself, and the voice of the Lord comes to him and tells him, this is what... No, this is why this is important. And just as you were talking about with the Egyptians, sometimes God kills the wicked to aid the righteous and stuff. And it's all finalized with oaths. They swear oaths to each other, and everything is hunky-dory, everything is fine and stuff. And so it's all following the Spirit. Again, it's all that, like, the chapter begins short, like, let us keep the commandments of God. Let's be diligent in keeping the commandments of God. So he tells his brothers, that's what he tells Zoram. He says specifically Laban wasn't willing to keep the commandments of God. Again, so it's all about following a higher law, and even if that higher law seems to go against, and it's really hard to argue morally, but I guess because you're like, well, how is this not an exception then? Or like, people can just create exceptions, and that's not the idea here. The idea is that you have to be pretty sure. But again, okay, we know that Lehi and Nephi are prophets. The Lord visited them and explained and showed them things, and showed them future things, and sort of gave them different various challenges and stuff, and prepared them, and that they were prophets. They were receiving, they saw angels, they spoke to God and things in this really wonderful way that most of us don't get to do as face-to-face like Moses did, like the prophets get to. And so you see that I don't believe that God would just tell anyone, oh, you gotta go kill your cousin and take his stuff. Like, that's not a sane thing to think, and that's not at all the context that the Book of Mormon is making here. We have, again, in a city of wickedness that God has told them is going to be destroyed soon, he commanded them to flee. They were faithful in that. He commanded them to go back. They were faithful in that. He commanded them to obtain the scriptures, and that he would prepare a way for them to do it. And then, even though it seems an unsavory path, and he had to do this horrific thing as a young man, he was guided by the Spirit. The Spirit reasoned with him as, like, these are why these things are meant to happen. The Spirit spoke to him and inspired him. These are the reasons why this is meant to happen. Like, it's very different than just a psychotic voice and stuff, because the arguments that it puts forth make sense. and stuff. It's not a psychotic thing in any way. Behold, the Lord prepared a way, just like he said. The Lord delivered him into your hands, and he tried to kill you himself, and presumably he's probably killed other people killed before. He didn't seem like it was suddenly a big decision for him to want to. His first thing was like, "You're a thief, kill him." That was kind of his gut reaction to Laman asking for the plates nicely in the first place. So he's not a great guy, and that he wouldn't come. He was a thief, tried to kill. He was a murderer and a thief, basically. And the Lord himself called him wicked, and said it's better in this case that one man should perish than a whole nation of peoples that will be your children should dwindle and perish in unbelief. They need the gospel in their lives. So again, we have this recurring theme of the importance of the gospel, of the scriptures, of the importance of personal revelation and things. And he remembered the spiritual experience the Lord had given him and the visions and things he'd seen, and that he'd been commanded to uphold the law, the commandments of God according to the law of Moses. And he's like, how can we do that if we don't have the law with us? We need to take a copy of the law for my children, otherwise things will get distorted and changed and stuff. He saw he could see the bigger picture here, and he saw that this was an important thing to happen. And yes, on some level it's still morally wrong to do it, but again, who is the more guilty, the nation that wages war on another nation, or the soldier that has to carry out the orders of his country and shoot someone who might potentially be innocent or potentially be hostile? But anyway, I'm kind of talking in circles here, and there's a lot we could talk about if it was a two-way discussion. A lot of things we could talk about here about it, but my faith is not called into question at all by the occurrence of this verse. Indeed, I see it as in many ways prophetic of the higher law that Jesus would give unto the Jews, and I think it is an important lesson in learning to discern and follow the Spirit. If you're going to follow that Spirit to do something that potentially you would otherwise find morally questionable, you better be 100% sure that voice that you're following is the Spirit of God. And I think that's why it's important to learn how the Spirit speaks to you personally, to develop a strong relationship with the Scriptures, with the words of the Holy Prophets, with the things that the Lord has given us and shown us to be the right path, to be able to make these sort of decisions to follow the Spirit. Because that was Nephi's first reaction, was like, hang on a second, thou shalt not kill. I've never killed him. I've never killed a man. Killing is wrong. And then through the Spirit, God speaks to him and says, yes, but it's better that one wicked man should perish than a whole nation should fall into wickedness and perish and dwindle and perish because they don't have what we're trying to give them here. So, having the right foundation. Anyway, that's chapter 4 of the Book of Mormon, of the first book of Nephi. Tomorrow we're going to do chapter 5, but we'll get to that. Chapter 5 is slightly shorter, and it's not as not nearly as morally interesting to discuss. So it should be a much shorter video tomorrow. I went a bit longer because it's hard to talk about the morality of this thing, I guess, because when any words you say like someone can always try and find a way to take your argument and twist it around and things and stuff. And so it's important that we again learn to follow the Spirit. Thank you for watching. We're back tomorrow with episode 5, chapter 5 of the first book of Nephi. Thank you so much. And yeah, hopefully this helps. Have a good one, everyone.